Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, Books to Build STEM Activities to Complement Your Favorite Read-Alouds. My name is Jonathan Osterman, and I'm a learning specialist with the Van Andel Institute for Education, and I'm going to toss over to my friend here to introduce herself as well.
Hi, you guys. I'm Tara Tarango. I also am with the Van Andel Institute for Education, working with John, and happy to have you all here.
Awesome. We are excited to dive into the intersection of literacy and STEM today and look at how we can kind of bring the books that you're using every day in your classroom to life in a new and exciting way. Before we dive into that, a couple of details to take care of today. This webinar is going to be recorded, and it will be linked in a hyperdoc that has been shared with you in the chat. You can get the link to this recording and the slideshow there. And all the information we're covering today will be there as well. Additionally, Robin is in the background today. Robin, would you like to say hi?
Hi, everybody. We are very thankful that you are here with us today.
Thank you, Robin. And
November appropriate.
No, I tried. Thank you. Thanks for picking up on it, Tara.
I see you.
Robin will be able to help you all with any technical difficulties you have or any other questions you have along the way. She'd be happy to troubleshoot those for you. So don't be afraid to drop her a line.
All right, and again, just before we get started, I wanted to share that our sponsor for this is our shop, our Inquiry Outpost. So there's lots of different fun STEM activities and other resources for teachers that you can take advantage of a 20% discount there. So you'll see there at the top, there's the code webinar. So if you would like to visit vaieducation.org and go to that shop and use that code, is good for anything in the store. So be sure and check that out later.
Awesome. So our content today is really focused on kindergarten through 5th grade, but we're going to throw up a poll real quick and just see who's joining us. I know while it's focused on those younger grades, I think some of the tools and some of the things you'll be able to hear today will apply to those older grades. So we'll just take a pulse who's with us today. And Robin should have thrown that poll up, and we'll see what we get here.
John, they're still rolling in, so we need about 5 more seconds and we'll close it out.
Awesome.
Right. Maybe a little less than 5, but all right. Looks like we have representation from all grades. So we have upper elementary at 56%, early elementary at 51%, middle school 24%, admin other at 12%, and 5% high school.
Awesome, nice mix, heavy in that sweet spot where we're at today. So that'll be great. And so on that note, our agenda for today is to look at literacy and STEM connections for a little bit, and then talk about a cool tool that we want to share with you that can help you kind of build those connections between literacy and STEM challenges in your classroom, something ready to go that you can use tomorrow already. And then we want to talk a little bit about how you can do this yourself in your classroom with maybe a book that you spend a lot of time and effort on in your classroom, so you can bring something to life on your own. We'll wrap up by chatting a little bit about how you can prep a STEM space to implement these quickly and effectively, and that will be our day. So Tara's going to kick us off here, and here we go.
Yeah, in the webinar, you'll get a survey. And if you fill out that survey, that will also enter you to win a full library, 30 different STEM activities tied to different books. So be sure and fill out that survey when you get done. So yeah, we'll spend a little time talking about literacy and STEM connections. John went through the agenda, but 30 minutes goes super fast. So apologies ahead of time if we talk really fast. There's so much to share, but we will get right to it. So when we think about literacy and STEM, often we sort of are, I don't know, just sort of led to believe or just ingrained with the idea that these are very separate worlds. One is colorful and creative and vibrant in the way that you see on the picture on the left. And the other is a little more stark and severe and technical, you know, the world of STEM, as you see on the right. And so we're kind of ingrained with this idea, but we all really know that that's not the way it looks in the real world. So just a few ways these things are connected in our everyday lives. One is just the idea of science fiction. You know, we read a novel that is clearly literacy, but it's about a science sort of topic. So that's an easy one right off the bat. Another one you see all around us and more is the idea of infographics. And I really like to point this one out because an infographic is really telling a story. There's a very literary component to that. You're communicating something, you're conveying the story, but you're using data, you're using numbers, you're using graphs. So this idea of melding those two worlds to communicate that message is something we see a lot of. Maybe you're looking at social sciences and think those fit a little bit more in that kind of, colorful left side of the screen view. But they are always doing tons of mathematical modeling in those social sciences. So that's a key part of that as well. And Columbia University actually just opened a new major called medical humanities. So it literally just blends these two ideas. So that's another way we can see these connected. And then look no further to your daily dinner. If you're a cook at home, you are reading a recipe, you have fractions probably in that recipe, so you're mathing a little bit. You're probably transforming these ingredients as you science them, Maybe there was social studies involved when you went to the grocery store and the economics of buying all these things. So just in your daily routine of cooking dinner, you can see all these different subject areas represented as just one way. And to further drive this point home, I like to sort of put this to you and say, look at all these skills. I think these are all skills or characteristics or qualities that we would say we want our students to excel in, to develop, and to have something, really a strong grasp on these different things. But what if I challenge you to say which ones are STEM and which ones are literacy skills? If you look at the list, how difficult would that be to divide them out like that? And I would venture to guess, I've asked this in person several times, and the resounding answer is it's impossible. But yet we are taught to kind of think of them this way. If I gave you this slide first and said, here's the reading strategies and skills, you would say like, yep, those are those. And if I said, these are the STEM skills, you'd say, yep, those are STEM skills. But you could look at any one of them, summarizing in the reading strategies. Could you summarize things that you're doing in STEM? Of course you can. Perseverance is in STEM, but do you need perseverance in reading? Of course you do. Any number of these could be interchangeable. And so it's just a way to try to divorce ourselves from this hard, fast idea that these are very separate worlds and strive for this sort of imaginary world in our classroom where it has all the color and vibrancy and life of the literary world, but all the technical excitement and engineering skills of the STEM world. So this sort of makeshift thank you AI image is meant to sort of give us a new goal for the type of atmosphere we want to create in our classrooms. We want a world where both of these things exist together in a way that actually complement one another. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish with this. So as John mentioned, we're going to get really practical and share some resources with you. So these are our what we call books to build, and we're going to share with you 3 different books and then a STEM activity that can go with them. So we've divided them into these 3 categories: STEM narrative books. So these are kind of fun picture books, fiction, but they have some sort of STEM tied to them. Then we have classics. So these are ones that you probably already have in your library right now. Maybe you're already reading to your students at a K-5 level. And I saw there was some middle school and even some high school there. One of my favorite things to do is to read picture books to older students. They love that chance to sort of feel like a kid again. So I definitely wouldn't shy away from that. Anyway, we have classics, and then we have STEM nonfiction. So sort of nonfiction, true story, STEM books as well. So hopefully this, at the end, we'll share with you the list of titles. So you'll have 10 titles for STEM narrative, 10 classics, and 10 STEM nonfiction. So if nothing else, some new books to think about adding to your library. But also we'll take you through one in detail and then a couple of the other 2 here, just the idea. As I said, the time goes by really quick. So we'll start with flight school. And I always, when I do this with teachers in person, I always am clear to say, like, I don't mean to be pedantic, but I know time is something you don't have. And so I'm actually going to take the time to read the book. It's about 4 minutes. But this way, whether it's something that you want to read in your classroom, and you don't have to take the time to pre-read it. So if you haven't read Flight School before by Lita Judge, it's a really great book. Here it is. I'm such a snob. I really like hard copy or hardcover books, even though they're ridiculously expensive. But we have the slides here too. So I'll read the story so you can become familiar with Flight School. All right. I was hatched to fly, said Penguin. When do classes start? But you, dear, are a penguin, teacher replied. Undeniable, said Penguin, but I have the soul of an eagle. So you can see they're going to flight school. Teacher and Flamingo weren't so sure, but they let Penguin stay. Flight practice started immediately. Like this, flip, flap, flap, and up, up, up. I was hatched to fly, said Penguin. I might have put that one wrong.
I went backwards, Tara. That's my bad.
All right. Penguin and the other birdies practiced for weeks. All right, we're back on track. At last, all the birdies were cleared for their first flight. One by one, they took to the wind. And then it was Penguin's turn. Geronimo! What do we think is going to happen? Glub, 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 glub. Goes right into the water. I'm sorry, Birdie, said Teacher. Penguins just aren't built to fly. How can this be true, thought Penguin. In my heart, I live on the wind. But as he watched his classmates fly high above, he knew it was time to go home. Penguin was too broken-hearted to even wave goodbye. His teachers didn't know what to do. Then Flamingo had an idea. Wait. You can see here they have rigged up something interesting for Penguin. Do we think that's going to work? Let's try again. Flip, flap, flip, flap, flap. And up, up, up. Suddenly, Penguin was soaring above the sea and the clouds. I didn't think that was going to work. Penguin was right. He did have the soul of an eagle. He just needed a little help with the technical parts. You can see there, Flamingo's given a little assist. But however he felt inside, he still had the body of a little round penguin. Landed in the trees there. But Penguin didn't care. He had soared on the wind just as he had done in his dreams. He left flight school a happy little penguin. You can see the sign there now says, "We teach all birds to fly." It wasn't long before he came back. Look who he has with him. My friend Ostrich has the soul of a swallow. Eep, says Flamingo. I think that's the end, right? Yes.
It sure is.
There we go. All right. It's a great little book, super fun to read. The kids get into it. Lots of social emotional learning stuff you can do with that too, in terms of helping one another, empathy. So it's a great book in lots of different ways. But I like to start with this one because if you just feel like you have zero time for STEM at all, you can do this, I promise, which is read this book and you can take 5 minutes to have the students build a paper airplane. So this is the criterion constraints for this particular activity is to build a paper airplane, and it needs to fly in a straight line. It should fly a distance of at least 5 feet. It should remain in the air for at least 3 seconds. The constraints are you can only use the materials provided, which when I've done this, it's just paper, and then I usually put some crayons or something, so if I have some early finishers, they can decorate their planes. But then they have just 5 minutes to build and test, and then we can have a great fly off. I think we might even have some pictures of some students doing this. Yeah, so they lined them all up there. You can see some of them decorated them. These are they are. This teacher took them to the cafeteria. She was really invested here to give them lots of space to try out. So again, paper airplane isn't the most, high-tech STEM, challenge out there. You could do something from this and say, let's actually build something that could actually support penguin flying. And John will give some more ideas on that in a little bit later. But if you just have 5 minutes, this is something, as long as you're putting criterion constraints, you're doing STEM. So it's a way to take what would have been like an art activity or a fill activity, give it some criterion constraints, and you can call it STEM, call that a win. Then you can take it as far as you want. You could also then from there think about the science. If you wanted to from there, you could say, okay, do you want to know why this one worked better than that one? You could ask them to make predictions when they see the airplanes of everybody. Whose do you think is going to go furthest and why? And then you could use that to talk about drag and thrust and lift and all the different things that could go into making that. Or again, if you don't have the time, it's okay. Count it as a win as you did a little STEM by having some criterion constraints. So that's flight school, and I'm not going to read to you the next two, but I want to at least introduce these 2 ideas to you so you have 3 that you can use. And I did want to point out in your handout, you will have the resource for these. So here's flight school. You have some before, during, and after reading questions. And then on the back, there's not only the criterion constraints, but also some tips on, how you could improve your airplane and some procedure ideas and reflection extension as well. So you have these 3 activities in your handout. So the second one is Caps for Sale. This is a book most elementary teachers are familiar with, always a fun read. And I have the participants, they will make a stack of caps. So they see how many stacks they can cap and walk for 10 paces without it falling down. I usually give 7 minutes for that one. But again, you can set the time. And this, I use balloons, pipe cleaners, or Chanel sticks, I think they call them now. But also, just kind of whatever random materials you have. And you'll be surprised how different, how creative they get with defining what a hat is or cap and how they can do that. And then the last one I want to share with you, this is one where sometimes I was introducing a STEM activity to go with a book. This is a STEM activity you're probably familiar with, which are Rube Goldberg machines. And sometimes these, take months and months. But I wanted to encourage you, if you don't have that time, you could do it in 10, 15 minutes. You just need something that's going to roll, probably something round, a marble, a toilet paper roll, or something like that. You could ask for maybe 2 energy transfers. And then maybe 10 minutes. But I wanted to share this book, which is Just Like Rube Goldberg, which is a nonfiction book of the story of Rube Goldberg, which is really fascinating, and I had no idea. So it's a great book if you are looking for a read aloud to go with that particular activity that maybe you've thought about doing or are already doing. So again, lightning fast there, 3 different books to build that you may want to consider. So I'm curious just to kind of give you a chance to respond and reflect. Which of these might you try with your students? Robin will throw up another poll and we'll just take the pulse of which ones you might want to try.
I got to read the Rube Goldberg one. I haven't touched that one yet, to be honest, either. And I love Rube Goldberg machines, so.
Yeah, it's great. It has the whole thing is nonfiction, but it's got a nice little part at the end with a little bit more facts and stuff. So if you want to go a little bit deeper, but it's a good story.
Nice. Excellent.
All right. Looks like we're going to close it out here in just a couple seconds. All right. Well, it looks like people will try all of these, which is awesome. But the winner is Flight School at 63%, followed by Just Like Rube Goldberg at 50%, Caps for Sale at 42%.
Okay, thanks. We just do that and make sure there's not a dud out there that we need to take out of the rotation. So it looks like they're all got a little love. So thanks and let us know how it goes. You'll have the survey at the end. You'll have our emails on the handout. We'd love to hear how these go for you if you have any suggestions for future books and activities for us to do.
Love that. Time well spent reading that book, it turns out. So there we go. All right. So if you're looking for more, though, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about how you can take books you're reading in your classroom already and kind of transform them into your own STEM activity. So to kick that off, right, the process that we're using that you see on a small level, kind of with the challenges Tara just shared, is this whole process of engineering design, right? Now, I'm not going to talk through each step of this today, but this is kind of the frame that I use when I work towards building an engineering challenge in my classroom, all the kind of parts and components, right? We start with a problem. We're going to identify that personal knowledge that kids already know about a topic. They're going to develop solutions or brainstorm. They're going to test them, observe and analyze what they tested. And then that secondary knowledge piece is that scientific knowledge or other content knowledge we want our students to walk away with that Tara mentioned. We're looking at maybe drag or gravity, flight topics, right? And how can that inform maybe our solution? Then we're going to develop a solution and hopefully share it out, as you saw in those great pictures, the kids showing off their paper airplanes and how far it went, right? What I love about this cycle is it is super flexible. It is a cycle. It's iterative. It's not laid out in a linear format because we can pick and choose some of these pieces as it suits our needs for a particular challenge. So I am going to spend the most time, though, on looking at how do we develop a problem today. So let's dive right into that. So to identify our problem, right, we're going to take a look at the book that we're reading, and we're definitely going to consider kind of those literary topics, all those key components of a book and what can inspire us within that book. So we can take a look at characters, right? In the story Tara read today, we got our penguin. And we could ask ourselves questions. These are all in your handout too for your own brainstorming. What's the character trying to achieve? What physical qualities does that character have or not have that might limit their ability to do something, right? What needs or wants does that character have? A lot of good ones there with our one today. We'll talk more about in just a moment. The setting. We can turn and look at where does this take place. In our Flight School book, where we've got this kind of beachy, aquatic like setting. The penguin's kind of out of place, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But what aspects of the environment could pose a problem or be a basis for our challenge? We've got the plot. The plot is pretty broad. There's a lot of small events that take place along the way. We could pick up on something very tiny in there. For example, I saw a boat going by in one of those pictures, right? We can think about that in just a minute. So the plot, what key events happen in the story's journey, in the character's journey, or what can we invent to make the journey easier, or maybe change the course of the story. One of my favorite examples is the story of Humpty Dumpty, and we do an egg drop challenge, right? But how can we change the outcome of Humpty Dumpty? Can we keep Humpty Dumpty from breaking, right? So how can we change that plot? Theme. This one's a little bit more abstract, but we can tap into it too, and maybe stretch our creativity there. But what underlying message in the story do we want kids to grasp, or do we want them to work on? I'm thinking about things like communication or teamwork or perseverance here, maybe in the penguin's case. Maybe creative thinking, right? Different solutions to get penguin flying. And those could be the basis for a challenge too, even if the challenge itself doesn't connect to maybe the content of the story. We could connect to the theme of the story. And then finally, the conflict. This could be the lowest lying fruit, right? Can we take the conflict in the story, the problem that's happening in the story, and just transform that into a challenge in our classroom? So what obstacles are present for our story that we could tap into? In this case, the penguin wanted to fly and couldn't, right? So we can riff off of all of these great things. So I wanted to use flight school as an example to show how we could kind of stretch that, right? I got 6 different ideas here. I won't detail every single one, but some of the other possibilities, we could get penguin flying by using a catapult. Can we design a catapult that's going to send our penguin flying? Can we design a nest? Our characters are all birds. Birds have habitats. Maybe in science, we're thinking about habitats and environments. So can we design an effective nest for our birds to live in? We got a lot of different birds in that book too to explore. The penguin slide challenge, maybe they're starting from a really high place and they need to get down from that place since they couldn't fly. The igloo challenge, right? Like I said, penguin's a little out of place in this setting. So maybe we're going to try and make a home for penguin since he can't fly home or something like that right now. And then the bridge challenge is just another riff on like getting from point A to point B, right? Penguin's trying to move. Maybe he needs to cross a bridge instead. And then, like I said, pick up on small things in your book. There's a boat going by. Can we make a boat challenge that they're going to use to transport these birds in the water that had maybe a failed flight attempt or something like that? So let your creativity, run wild here. Pick up on those small things in those books and develop a challenge from there. Once you've kind of got your problem statement, right? What's going to be the problem? For our purposes, I'm gonna latch onto this igloo challenge, right? Can we design an igloo to keep our penguin cool in this hot setting? All right. The next thing we're going to do is just try to come up with criteria to help define that challenge. What goals or what benchmarks are we going to measure success against for our students? So these are cookie cutter ideas here that you can just take and apply to any problem. So number one is developing a measurable goal. This could be something about an amount of time, a distance, maybe stability in the case of our plane. How much weight can something carry? For our igloo challenge, we might think about, can we put an ice cube inside of a house and keep it from melting the longest, right? Functionality. What do we want our thing to do? What's going to be some functionality? So moving straight, staying airborne, maybe we're protecting something. And then user-friendly features. For example, in our igloo, maybe we want to make sure we have a door that opens and closes that our penguin can go in and out of. And our penguin has to fit in there, of course, right? And then efficiency as well. This one kind of ups the level a little bit. Efficiency kind of takes into account, maybe, are we using the fewest materials to keep our igloo or our penguin cool the longest, right? So efficiency might be that extra one for those students that are really looking for a challenge in their classroom. So these 4 things you could take and apply to just about any challenge. Use one of them, use 4 of them, whatever your time permits can allow for that challenge to flourish. On the other end of the spectrum, we have constraints, right? What are we limiting our students with? So same idea here, 4 kind of cookie cutter things you can take away. Time is always a constraint. Tara mentioned 5 minutes, 7 minutes. How much time are we going to give our students to work on this? Restricting materials to just paper and pipe cleaners. Do we want to add a budget to these materials, right? You've got X amount of dollars, imaginary dollars, of course, that you can spend on this particular challenge. Nice way to integrate the math into there, right? Size and weight boundaries. I love to get boxes, maybe boxes you got lying around from Amazon or something, that you can use to kind of say, hey, your device needs to fit inside of this box. And it needs to be portable inside of this box, right? And then other just design rules that you think of. We don't have glue or limited amounts of tape, or it must stand alone. It can't fall apart, right? Things like that. So 4 nice, easy constraints to grab and attach to your challenge there. Once you've got your problem statement, your criteria, constraints, you're ready to let your students run wild on their creative ideas. And so here's just a quick step-by-step procedure you can share with kids, brainstorming their idea. I often like to have a benchmark of get my approval before you start building. Otherwise, I'm sure many of you know, they'll just dive right into the materials without pre-thinking these things, which maybe time you want them to do that, right? Maybe that's how it's going to work. Then gathering materials, testing it against the criteria and constraints, observing what happens, analyzing it, and then repeating the whole thing. So I'm going to dive a little bit more into the solution test there. On this screen, you see I call this our engineering and design form. This just applies to any challenge. And so in the first box here, we are going to describe or sketch our solution. The second box, we're going to make observations when we go to test it. Maybe with our igloo, I've got a heat lamp set up. They're going to place their igloo underneath. We're going to time how long it takes that ice cube or whatever to melt, right? So we can record a time. I can record, maybe I see light shining through and I know that maybe more heat's getting through there. I can jot down those little qualitative notes as well. And then our last box here is for our students to think through what are they going to do next, right? What are they going to change, material changes, and then going back and doing it again. I love this to keep track of, you know, our iterations. How are things progressing? On the solution test as well, I like to run most of my challenges in the format of kids are working individually or in teams and testing them over and over for a set amount of time. Then we get to a whole group test like you saw in the gym or the cafe setting there, right? And we're gonna watch each other test our designs. I encourage you too to think through, do you want this to be competitive? Some challenges kind of lend themselves to be competitive. That can be great. It can also be detrimental to some students. So I love this idea of co-opetition and how can we get our whole class to collaborate and work together. So for example, maybe we're going to tally how many ice cubes survive more than 2 minutes in our class. Can we get every single ice cube to survive more than 2 minutes in their igloo, right? We're now collaborating as an entire class and we have a whole goal to achieve as a class. Can we lower averages? Can we get the best average? Something or other, whatever we're testing there. So consider co-opetition as a possibility. Finally, wrapping up, we can just do a couple quick reflection questions on how the challenge went. This is a great place to interject some content knowledge as well. If you got questions about what materials maybe blocked the most heat, what materials seem to melt the ice cube the quickest, right? Things like that. And then of course, we want to share out our designs, make this thing public. Can you put it up in the classroom? Can you share it with families? You can always share it with us. Our hashtag is VAI education. We would love to see it and chime in as well. So share out your awesome that those students have created. All right, sprint mode here, Tara.
Right. No problem. We'll bring it home. I'm just going to leave you with this idea to prep your spaces. In your handout, you have a link to what we call our Makers 50. And it's the 50 things that we recommend you have in a makerspace, all super easy to find. So a couple different ways you can use this. Put the poster out with the bin, you know, outside your classroom so parents can drop off stuff. You could send parents the checklist and hope that they help you there. And there's also some labels if you want to use those to help keep things organized in your classroom. So you can check that out and use it as you'd like. And we'll just zoom through just kind of talking about the things that we've talked about. I want to make sure you know the free stuff you're leaving with, the 3 activities for the 3 books and the Makers 50. And as I promised, here is that list of all 30 titles. So you can check those out and get some new ideas for some STEM books for your classroom. And those are at vaieducation.org. But like I said, if you do the survey, you can enter to win all 30 activities.
Fantastic, nice job. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, we would love to see you back again. Our next webinar is happening in December, and it is titled Why PD Sucks and What to Do About It. Sounds like a great one to be at, so we hope to see you there. And just a reminder, our sponsor today, the Inquiry Outpost, head there to check out all the awesome resources we have. If you love engineering and design, we've got some other resources to help you quickly and effectively implement some of these awesome things in your classroom. And as Tara's mentioned a couple times, fill out that survey at the end here and you can win some free resources for yourself as well. But thank you for joining us today. And we hope you are able to take these and apply them to your classroom, and we hope to see you again soon.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.